Welcome to another episode of Chris McDaniel's America here on the Midnight Ride Network, your home of the anti-establishment movement in this country. With me, as always, Jack Fairchilds. Jack, how are you?
I'm doing all right, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. Today's show is going to be interesting from a lot of perspectives. You know, you might have seen the title, taken the time to look at that. It's a serious question about where the country is heading, where it has been heading, and what's going to happen in the future as we face an adversary, that is the Democrats, not the modern Democrats, who really share nothing in common with us. They share nothing in common with the founding fathers, very little in common with founding principles. Now, they give lip service to those things, but when it comes right down to it, we've seen time and time again, and just this week with Tim Kaine, another example of how far the Democrats have removed themselves from mainstream American thought. There's a concept known as the Overton window. I'll talk about that later in the show. And in that window, the idea is that's where all the mainstream thoughts are politically, where we can discuss and move the window to the right or the left, whichever way the country wishes to move. Well, here's the thing. The thought processes of the Democrat Party have been so far to the left, they have stretched the Overton window to ideas that used to be considered nonsensical, or for that matter, even dangerous. And that's kind of where we are today. And as we struggle with the technology and we struggle with the ability to communicate with one another, lost somewhere in translation is why our country has existed so long and has done so well, the envy of the world. That's not an accident. There's nothing inherently noble or perfect about our citizenry. What makes us special, in so many ways exceptional, is the form of government the founders adopted. So, if we know that, and we believe that, why are the Democrats trying to tear it down? That's a big question. And if they do tear it down culturally, right, the institutions, whatever the case may be, what's left for free people? Where are we supposed to go? Where are we supposed to live? Now, you think I may be overstating these things. I don't think I am. I don't think I am. And the show's going to be methodical to a sense today, if you'll just bear with me, as to why socialism, big government, right, the welfare state, why it is that ultimately it's more counterproductive than productive, why it hurts the citizens as opposed to uplifts the citizens. And I'm going to give you some examples of that, and then probably talk about this Tim Kaine response, where he said in a Senate hearing the other day that our rights don't come from God.
Oh, wow.
This is a sitting United States senator. He's 67 years old. He went to Harvard Law School. It goes to show that a degree from Harvard means nothing anymore, evidently, because if they can't teach basic notions of American history to a man who should know better, then what good is it? So Tim Kaine made a statement, Senate hearing, our rights don't come from God. He said they come from government. Welcome to North Korea. I mean, what an unbelievable statement for a so-called educated man to make, but it just proves my point. He may have had the influence, the pull, the money, the prestige, the privilege to go to Harvard, but that doesn't make him smart. It doesn't make him well-read. It made him connected. And even now, if you ask me, the lowest common denominator of people in this country serve in Congress, the Senate, and the House. Some of the dumbest, most ignorant people I've seen, asking some of the dumbest questions I've ever seen, behaving in ways that actually destroy the institution from within, right? And so this guy says that. I'm going to tell you why that's important in a second. And then I want to end, I think at some point today, along the same vein of liberty, with free speech. There is an Irish-born American who went back home to England a few days ago. He was arrested for speaking his mind. Can't make this up. He says some things that were not friendly to the transgender movement. You probably saw this.
I did.
He said some things that were not exactly friendly. Speaking his mind, He was detained. He was arrested by English authorities upon arrival. England has always been, not exactly the friendliest country when it comes to civil liberties, which is why they had to get their butts kicked in the 1700s. Which is why I still think there's many ways to eliminate the English from Scottish participation in their government, or for that matter, Northern Ireland. More on that later. But the English have always been very, how would you say, curious, controlling, not really big believers in freedom. But if you think about it, this Western functioning democracy now is arresting people for speech. I want to talk about why that's important as well. But first things first, socialism and the welfare state in this country. Now look, the liberals kind of hold us over a barrel with these issues, don't they?
They do.
They purport or they behave like they care about people. And they say, well, so-and-so has to eat, okay? So-and-so needs free health care. All right. So-and-so needs free cell phones, okay? So on and so forth. And no matter what it is they're saying is free, there's some rationalization for it. You need a cell phone so you can look for a job. You need a car so you can drive to a job. And it's just an ever-expanding sense of entitlement that people are expecting to receive from Democrats who pit the rich versus the poor, who pit classes against one and the other, and then promise that the ultimate utopia is because or through the acts of government. Here's the thing. I don't know a single conservative in the world that wants people to be hungry. I don't know a single person in the world that wants someone to go without health care. Those are noble objectives, noble characteristics. It's not whether people should or should not. It's what's the best way to get it done. And that's where the liberals always get it wrong, because they say the best way to get it done is always through more government. You've seen that. They discount private charities. They discount religions. They discount individual involvement. No. They want to use collective force, coercion, right, to literally go into somebody's pocketbook and take their money and then spend it on whatever they see fit. That's what it is. That's the force of government. They call that justice. Sounds like theft to me. But what does it do to the person? You see, if you're going to adopt a social or political system, the question is, what does it do to the individual? And a system that doesn't elevate the individual isn't a very good system. So, over the years, since the Great Society, and even before, wars on poverty, all of these things from the 30s on, have we eliminated poverty yet? Are the individuals better than they were? And is there a reason for that? Maybe government shouldn't be doing these things after all. So let's talk about it. Government, what does it do well?
Yeah.
I'm asking.
I'm drawing a blank.
What does it do well? What does it do efficiently?
Still drawing a blank.
What does it do? Okay, name a single government program that's not over budgeted. Name one that hasn't been touched with corruption. Name one that simply can't find ways for the end dollar to meet the end objective. We have a long history of this.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing. If you confess that government's not really good about allocating resources, then why do you keep giving it resources? If you confess that politicians are the least noble and the least intelligent and the least well-prepared citizens in the country, why do you keep giving them power over your life?
That's a great question.
Well, let's talk about that. Bureaucratic waste. Here's the thing about money. When government does reach into your pocketbook and it steals your money, do you think it spends it responsibly?
Nope.
Why? Remember now, we don't adopt political systems or social systems without thinking about people first. So you just answered it, Jack. Does government spend your money responsibly? The answer?
No.
So why not? And here's why. Because nobody ever spends somebody else's money as responsibly as they would have spent their own money.
Yep.
Jack, if you give me $1,000 free dollars, I may do 1,000 crazy things. But if I had to earn that money, I'm probably going to be much more frugal and careful with
Yeah.
it. It's the same thing with government. Remember, I'm going to say it 1,000 times today. Before you adopt a political or social system, you have to ask yourself, what does it do to the individual? How do people behave when given free things? Mm-hmm. You can't discount human nature. We have thousands of years of human nature, and those things haven't changed. There'll always be greed and corruption. There'll always be those seeking power. there'll always be those willing to give up power. There'll always be those wanting to take your money and do something else with it. We know that for a fact, but we know that government will never spend your money as efficiently as it spends, as you would spend it. And that's called a misallocation of resources. Does that make sense?
It does.
And it creates unintended consequences. So now you have politicians now trying to control their bad spending, and they pass other programs to somehow correct what they themselves did in the first place, and this vicious cycle is created. Government passes a law to fix a problem, which in turn creates two problems. So they pass two more laws to correct those problems, which in turn creates four problems, because government isn't efficient. So let me ask you this. Where do you suppose efficiencies would be? Locally, among private people, with voluntary private exchange, or with politicians playing games in Washington? That's the options. And if you want a big welfare state, just raise your hand and say it, but you got to be willing to concede the waste, the fraud and corruption, and the loss of control you're ultimately going to have. Here's something else with a welfare state. What's it do to the soul? You see, these aren't just fiscal considerations. Yeah. I'll say it again. If you're going to adopt a social or political system, you have to ask yourself, what does it do to the individual? Is there a moral cost? Listen to this. There's a theory that's going to blow your mind that your rights come from God and that you are more than a material element, that you have a soul. How weird is that?
It's weird.
It's weird. See, liberals don't believe that, most of them.
Yeah.
But you have a soul. So in other words, if they want to bring you down to a lowest common denominator and make you a materialist element, someone that just spends and consumes, spends and consumes, spends and consumes, they can put you on a database as a material element and then show disparities in life, create divisions, and somehow use that to win political office. But think about it. Perverse incentives, erosion of freedom. What does it do to the soul? To the soul. You see, I'm not saying that purely as a spiritual thing. Have you ever done a good hard day's work?
Absolutely.
I mean, really, putting 10, 12 hours in, knocked out all your projects.
Yep.
And you went home and you felt great.
Or exhausted.
No, stop. Forget that. No, I'm dead serious. I'm not joking about it. This is a question of the soul. Forget exhaustion. You work your tail off, you check all the boxes, and you feel a sense of goodness.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're not American, or you're not human. Mm-hmm. I don't know a single person that can say, I went today, I checked all my boxes. I was a productive person. And then at 7 o'clock, I go home and I'm sitting there, I'm going to be tired, but I also feel pretty darn good about the day.
Because you got everything that you set out to do done.
That's part of the soul. Mm-hmm. It's part of being empowered by actions, by activity, by doing something. We were born to create. We were born to work. It makes us better. Mm-hmm. That's the part of the soul that liberalism discounts. Because when you give somebody something that doesn't rightfully belong to them, and you tell them work isn't necessary to achieve, generationally speaking, it goes worse and worse and worse as you progress, until now you are a material being. You've lost that willingness, you've lost that urge, you've lost that desire to get out there and make a difference. You don't believe that's the case? Look at our inner cities over the last 60 years. You don't believe it's the case? Look at the Delta, look at Appalachia, look at all these places where people have just quit. They've stopped. Another common example of that. You might remember back in the day, and I mean back in the day, the 1800s, for instance, late 1800s, if you were in a municipality, some small town, and you couldn't find a job, what would you do? Would you think about leaving, or would you just sit there, wait?
I would search other areas I could find employment.
Americans have always been the type, they didn't just sit there and wait for government to save them. They would take off westward, take off wherever there was a job and find prospects of employment. But that's not what welfare does to them. What does it do? It says, just sit there, checks are coming, and that soul further deteriorates. The idea that you have a meaningful life deteriorates. You lose hope. You lose the desire to make yourself better. And that's why we have these pockets of poverty popping up all over the country, despite the fact that we've spent trillions of dollars trying to fix and correct these pockets of poverty. The only way out of that poverty is to find a way to incentivize the soul, the working man, to try to do better. But does government do that?
No.
Tell me what it does.
Government makes you reliant on it. It tells you in many cases that you're the victim because you're not putting forth the effort. You're not trying to move elsewhere to find employment. It creates this mindset that goes back to what you were talking about with the soul, that, well, I'm not achieving my goals because of someone else, but hey, the government will take care of me.
So victimhood.
Victimhood.
So let's check
100%.
that box. Let's check that box. So in all your good intentions, liberals, here's what you've done. You've now established a victim class. So let's check that box. A, big time. You must feel really good about yourself. Your social program passed. Billions are being wasted. But you've created a victim class, number one. Number two, what else does it do? Dependency.
Yep.
You've created a dependent class now.
Yep.
I mean, literally. And I think that's really what most of you knuckleheads want. I think you want a dependent class that you can always use for votes.
Yep.
A dependent class that needs you more than they need self-determination. I think that was by design. You create a dependent class. So consider that. In a country founded in liberty, you now have created a class of people that don't feel like they're free because they're begging Democrats for favors. They're begging Democrats for handouts. Okay, number three. What about the social bonds of communities? You might remember there was a day that when someone could not eat or pay their bills, whatever the case may be, neighbors helped neighbors. Charities stepped in to assist.
The
Churches stepped in to assist. Number three, you have eroded all of those social bonds.
Yeah.
Does that make a community stronger or weaker?
Much weaker.
You leave it to Hillary. She says it takes a community to raise a child. Then she rips the community to pieces with big government programs. There's no community left to raise. What are you talking about?
No.
You just told us that Health and Human Services can raise this child.
Well, that's what she meant. She meant it takes government to raise a
No,
child.
they're ignorant.
Yep.
They discount human nature. They
Yep.
discount thousands of years of human history because they're more concerned about division and fooling people and keeping them trapped in poverty because they know that is a voting block for them. Benny Thompson, the Delta. People are trapped. Maybe they don't know any better, but they're not being enlightened by that man or by any Democratic politician in the world. They just sit there waiting for help, and they've been there for, 150 years? Waiting for the government's help? And what's it gotten them?
Nothing. More poverty. I mean, it really, and on all the points that you just got finished, it made them dependent. It made them accept that they were a victim instead of actually doing the things necessary. And sometimes, to your point, doing better means leaving the area that you're not finding success in.
Exactly right. And number five, the erosion of work ethic. Because again, if you're sitting there waiting and you're not working, you feel like you don't have to work. You don't have pride and ownership of your home. You don't have pride and ownership of the job. The soul deteriorates, and now you are just a material being waiting for help from your government, wherever it may be. And here's the thing about that. Societies can't survive that type of slide.
No.
It's not so much the math behind it, because the math is really bad. It's the loss of what it means to be American. Now we're getting back to the original point of the show. What does it mean to be an American? What are these principles that make us so special? And believe it or not, work ethic is one of those. Social norms and combinations and unities are among those. All of the things we describe, the life that you can be self-independent and self-sufficient and not dependent on government, that's among those. But we're losing that.
Big time.
And the bigger question is, what happens to us when it's gone? I have a writer here. His name is Derek Hunter. Don't know him. Pretty good writer. He just says it's Democrats or America. It can't be both. I don't have to read the rest of the article to know he's onto something.
I think he is too.
Because if they destroy the foundational principles of what this country was built upon, what do we have left and how can we ever reconcile? This is much bigger than what it used to be. The disagreements between parties back in the 40s and 50s was relatively subtle. Now, it seemed big at the time, but compared to today's split, it's pretty minor. Wouldn't you believe? Wouldn't you agree?
I think it 100% is, yes.
And one of the biggest ways we know it was minor is that we can't even agree on foundational principles. And that's what I want to get to right now. I talked about the welfare state. I talked about socialism. Tim Kaine. It's a big deal because
It's a huge deal.
Tim Kaine is a sitting United States senator. He's a former governor. Had Hillary won in 2016, he would have been vice president, a heartbeat away from the presidency.
Yep.
Senate hearing. This dude, I'm going to read the quote. I don't want to misquote this because it's too darned inflammatory in my mind. It's too risky to misquote. Quote, the notion that rights don't come from laws and don't come from government, but come from the creator, that's what the Iranian government believes. It's a theocratic regime that bases its rule on Sharia law and targets Sunnis, Christians, and other religious minorities. I swear, I don't know what side of this equation the Democrats are on. They're literally fighting for terrorists in Israel right now. He sounds here like he's actually against terrorists. But that's for another show. Look at it again. He says in the straight-faced Senate hearing that our rights do not come from God, that they come from government. That's one of the most dangerous things I've ever heard a United States senator say. It's a core doctrine of leftism. It refutes everything our founders believed, and probably as un-American as anything I've heard in a long, long time. The press was pretty quiet about it. Thought that was interesting.
Of course they were.
You would think CNN would pick up on a story like this, as wildly inaccurate as what he said was. Remember a few years ago there was this House representative, and I forget the man's name, but he talked about this island in the Caribbean that if we sent Marines there, it could tip it over. You know, he was.
I remember
the story?
I can't remember his name either, though.
I mean, it was this matches that level of stupidity. Now, in all fairness, that other guy must have been senile or approaching Joe Biden's mental capacity. But this matches that. And you say, well, why are you so upset? Well, here's the thing. This guy is supposed to know better, says all these things, and the American left follows suit. And the example he used was once again one of division. He was comparing the United States to Iran. Theocrats. You've probably heard the phrase as well that we're all Christian nationalists now.
I have heard that.
What does that even mean? Christian nationalism. I know what the proper definition of it is, but it literally applies to no one that I know.
Yeah.
I mean, think about this show. Think about our position. We don't want people to be forced to live anyway.
No.
That is exactly the antithesis of Christian nationalism, which would force, according to the liberals, theocratic rule. We're not trying to control people.
No.
We want to be left alone, right?
Yes, that's always been what we've said.
But it's a nice point, a nice talking point to create fear and rile up division. I wonder how many liberals actually believe that. Now you say, quit harping on that point. I can't stop harping on the point because it's foundational. Let me show you a few things here. The Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson, you may know, wrote that many years ago, and I'm sure to you liberals, he's probably just a horrid, terrible man. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Endowed by their Creator. He believes rights come from God. George Mason, I love this quote, that all men are by nature equally free and independent, and have certain inherent rights, of which, when they enter into a state of society, they cannot, by any compact, be deprived or divested of their posterity, namely, the enjoyment of life and liberty. Let's look at this carefully. Equally free and independent, and have certain inherent rights. Inherent from God. He believed it was from God. John Adams. Rights are antecedent to all earthly governments. Rights cannot be repealed or restrained by human laws. Rights are derived from the great legislator of the universe. He believes your rights are from God. Mm-hmm. You have rights antecedent to all earthly governments, he said. rights that cannot be repealed or restrained by human laws. Antecedent. Before human governments were even formed, you had rights. That's the beauty of the system. It's the beauty of the foundational principle, is that you have these rights at birth, and the government's role is not to grant you those rights or interfere with those rights, but just simply to protect those rights. That is a foundational principle. And you wonder why I'm so mad about Tim Kaine? Because he turns it completely upside down and bastardizes everything we believe in. Here's the problem. If government is the great perpetrator, which we believe that it is, of villains and mean and tragic responses throughout history, then why would you give those types of governments the ability to remove your rights? Because that's what you'd be doing if you can see they grant you your rights. Because government can grant you those rights is the very government that can remove them.
Mm-hmm. And would remove
them at any moment. And that's why the story in Great Britain is so important in a few minutes. Freedom of speech. They just removed the right.
Yeah.
And you think it can't happen here? You let people like Tim Kaine get in control, it'll certainly happen here.
One thing that I remember you saying years ago, and repeated it, as Europe goes, you can see the future coming to the American left.
Absolutely.
If Europe pushes something, it's coming here. It's just a matter of time.
Let's keep going here. I mean, Alexander Hamilton, which wasn't exactly an anti-federalist, was he?
No.
The sacred rights of mankind are not to be rummaged for among old parchments or rusty records. They are written, I love this, as with a sunbeam in the whole volume of human nature by the hand of the divinity himself, and can never be erased or obscured by mortal power. You see the beauty of this? They're saying that nobody can touch your rights. No government, no man, nobody. You were born with those rights by God. And that's why it's so important that we instill this concept, at least in the minds of children, because if they believe their rights come from government, then I guess they believe government can be utilized to take them away, or popular vote even could be used to take them away. And that's the big distinction between democracies and republics. In a democracy, they can literally just vote away your rights. In a republic, no matter what the majority says, you retain those rights. Tim Kaine is supposed to know this. There's so many. James Wilson, he signed the Declaration and the Constitution. Natural rights are not annexed to us by parchment and seals. They are created to us in the degree of providence. I don't know what to tell you guys except the line of thought is consistent from our founding to the fathers of the founding and generations subsequent up until this very moment, and now the Democrats are trying to rip it all to pieces. They're trying to rip it all to pieces.
It's frightening.
Just not to bore you, how much time do I have before a break? Getting close? Right now? 0?
Yeah, you're on top of it.
Well, here's what I want to do then. See, internal clocks. Here's what I want to do then. I'm going to transition out of this in a second, but I want to show you the unifying feature behind these thoughts, why they're important, and then we'll dive right into this freedom of speech aspect and why that has to be preserved. We'll be right back.
Resort.
Welcome back to Chris McDaniel's America. We just went over a series of statements from the Founding Fathers that show just how stupid Kaine is.
Mm-hmm.
Not the wrestler, the senator, Tim Kaine. Just how stupid he is and how he has no business being anywhere near the United States Senate. You say, what's the big deal? The big deal is this, philosophically speaking. Liberty is the purpose of the country. Now, I may step on some toes both on the right and left here, because I think sometimes we lose track of that as well.
I do.
Remember, the idea of America is bigger than geography. Now, we need borders, and I love the geography. It's a very beautiful country. But the idea of America is much bigger than that. Thatcher once said that Britain and Europe were created by history. America was created by an idea. That is a really profound statement. And that idea is the maximum of individual liberty consistent with social order. A government free of force, free of coercion, a government that had to ask the citizens first, our consent, before it could act. A government that did not exist to give us all these things, but simply existed to make sure that the rights we were born with could not be taken away. That's America. And if you try to change it, you change everything. It's based on philosophical writings by a guy, well, there's several. Montesquieu's one, John Locke is another. John Locke was born about 100 years prior to the Revolution, and many people would say that the American Revolution was a Lockean revolution. He was the one that began to talk about rights and how governments could not take those rights away and that they were natural to us or born or given to us by God at the moment of our birth. He wrote something really simple. No one ought to harm another in his life, health, liberty, or possessions. Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
It does.
Sounds a lot like what Jefferson wrote when he talked about life and the pursuit of happiness, right? Of course it was. Jefferson said that was his inspiration. His great insight was revolutionary, and it was simply that rights don't come from kings or governments. You're born with them. It changed all of human existence. You know, even going back to the ancient days where democracy was practiced a little, it always fell back to an ultimately power structure. Here he was turning that completely upside down. Locke. Jefferson talked about it. The founders adopted it. And do you know what Locke said about power? This is pretty revolutionary. He says that if government abuses it and goes any further than the protection of rights, the people will be the judges and could advocate revolution. Revolution. And they did. They took that very seriously. See, that's the idea of America.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how serious these men were about it, willing to die for an idea. You think they weren't fighting for property? They were already independently wealthy for the most part, most of them. They weren't fighting for property. In fact, by signing that declaration, they were forfeiting mostly their property.
They were.
And their lives, right?
Yeah.
But they did it. They were fighting for an idea. That's a noble thing, ideas like this. And that's why I'm so mad at Tim Kaine, because he just repudiated the idea. The very heart of the revolution, the very heart of what the founders did, he just threw it out with the garbage. And if that's who the American left is, we got no business with you.
No.
And that's a bigger conversation for another day. If you guys really believe this, how do we live under the same government? If you really hate us that badly. Do you hate us that badly?
Some of them do.
Do you hate the founders that badly?
Some of them do.
I saw a interesting, I wrote about this morning. You see it on my Facebook page. I got carried away, and I began to write about this notion that our rights were given to us by God. And lo and behold, here come the lefties. You know, and they're always going to throw out the 3/5 compromise. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that African Americans weren't treated the same as white Americans. And it's a good point. Here's what they fail to realize. But the seed of their ultimate freedom was planted in the words of the Constitution. The seed of the freedom was planted in philosophers like Montesquieu and Locke and Jefferson. And though they weren't perfect men, but for that perfect idea, you still wouldn't have liberty and freedom. You can't be so obtuse as to look at a couple of generations of history and there were bad decisions made, and to believe that the ultimate goal wasn't freedom for all people, because it's happening. And we still are working toward a more perfect union every single day. But it only works, that Constitution, if we follow the old principles. I think the liberals are self-defeating. Almost as bad as that woman who stole that baseball from that kid the other night
Oh,
at the
my
Phillies
goodness.
game.
Philly's Karen.
We'll talk about her in a second. When I saw, let me just tell the story, and I'm going to get straight back into the Constitution. So I'm watching SportsCenter the other night, and I see this outrage, and I go online to verify it, because I don't believe anything I see anymore.
As you should.
I am to the point in my life that if I can independently verify at least from 2 different sources of something occurring.
Sometimes 3.
I don't believe any of it. That's where I am in my life. If I look on Facebook and I see something, I'm like, yeah, that's cute. It ain't right. I can watch TV. I say, yeah, that looks cool, but it must not be right. I got to find sources. So I went on there and found the source. And sure enough, this crazy lady, I know you saw it.
Oh, absolutely. I saw it.
Let me set the picture for the people at home. It was a baseball game. You know, Jack and I are big baseball people. And there was a home run hit into the outfield in Philadelphia. And get this, I know this is going to shock you lefties, but when a baseball goes into the stands, it's a free-for-all.
It's fair game for who gets it first.
Just because you sit in row 12, seat 1, if it hits you there, that doesn't entitle you to the ball.
No.
It's a free-for-all. Whoever ends up with the baseball has the privilege of possessing the baseball.
That is accurate.
You know, what does the law say? Possession is 9/10 of the law. It's not true. But possession in the outfield of a baseball is the law. Turns out the ball landed. A guy runs over. He picks it up. He's a touch quicker than Karen. And he gets it. Somebody called her a Timu Elizabeth Warren.
I can see that.
I can see that. Well, he gets the baseball, and here's what made it noble in my mind. So he runs over, and he has a little boy there, his kid, his son.
Yeah.
Now, the dad didn't just take the ball and put it in his pocket, right? He literally runs over and hands it to the young man. That's noble.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're supposed to do. That's the second rule of bleachers in baseball. If you're going after a ball and you see a young person coming after it, you know what you do? You let them have it.
Yes, sir.
Or you get it and you give it to them.
Yep.
That's just old school baseball. I've done that. You've done that. That's just the way the game is played. Well, he did it to his son. It was a great father-son moment.
Yeah, and that was his favorite player, his son's favorite player that hit it.
It was meant to be. Mm-hmm. It's a great father-son moment. That's the way daddies are supposed to be. All of a sudden, out of the left field lounge comes this lunatic, Elizabeth Warren haircut, flying up to this man. Mm-hmm. I mean, with those crazy eyes. You've seen the crazy eyes.
Have.
All men have seen the crazy eyes.
I see them more frequently since I've gone in newspapers too.
And she comes, first of all, when she first gets over there, she shoves him a little bit. She grabs him. Mm-hmm. Well, sister, that's assault. Mm-hmm. I mean, it might not have been a massive assault. Yeah. She should have been charged right there. The second she put those hands on that man and moved him around, that's assault. Mm-hmm. Or battery, word it however you wish. But, of course, the man did nothing. In fact, he reacted kind of softly.
Very softly.
You see the reaction?
Yeah, I really think that he should have stood his ground more instead of just projecting himself as a...
In fairness, because I think you're right. And I know you wouldn't have given the ball over, and I wouldn't have given the ball over. But the world does need peacemakers. He looked like a nice guy.
It ain't going to be me.
Well, we know that. But he looked like a really nice guy. And so after giving the ball to his son, and then this Karen comes over, and she's accosting him. And there are the crazy eyes, and she's right in his face. And I think ultimately he just gave up the will to fight. He was like, this woman's possessed. I better get the baseball. What made it sad to me, though, is he had to reclaim it from his son, take it from his son to give it to her. I wouldn't have done that. You know, she could have yelled, screamed, whatever. My boy was keeping that baseball. That's just life. That's baseball. But he's a nice guy. And he did say in the interview afterwards, he said, he says, I didn't think she was ever going away. I was just trying to end the situation. There's something about that that's inherently honorable, even though I wouldn't have done it. No. Maybe that means I'm not honorable sometimes. I don't know. But we'd have been brawling in the stands.
I'm way too stubborn.
Right. So it happens. And then the good news is this. It ends on a better story.
Yeah.
The better story is this, is that the organization did come up and present the young man with a gift bag. Mm-hmm. You know, that was pretty nice. Yeah. And then later, the player that hit the home run asked to come meet him, and he gave him a signed baseball bat.
That was incredible.
And so the kid actually won the night.
Yeah.
And Karen, I'm not going to use her name because God knows she's already been crucified.
Yeah.
She lost the night. She was booed.
Yep.
What made it crazy, though, is even after she got booed, she was still indignant. Did you see that?
Oh, yeah. She flipped him the bird.
She flipped him the bird. I mean, now get this. This is going to sound awful, and it's going to get me in so much in trouble. I knew the second I saw her, she was a Democrat.
Yeah. She probably was a college professor somewhere, too.
I knew. I said, son, that is a liberal. If he said, "How do you know, Daddy?" I said, "Trust me, trust me, intuition." And sure enough, it turns out you can't get anything past the social media warriors nowadays. No. They flood to her page, and then you start to see all the Trump hating things she's got and all the Democrat stuff she's got. And I'm like, see, my assumptions are confirmed.
The sense of entitlement might have tipped you off based on our last segment.
It wasn't right. It wasn't just the appearance. I mean, clearly she had the appearance of someone who drives a Subaru. If that means anything to you. I hope y'all don't drive Subarus. Secondly, yes, the idea that she could just get up in somebody's face and yell and scream and demand her way, it reminds me of every liberal protest I've seen during the Trump administration. That's what it reminded me.
Yeah.
She could have just as easily been one of those, dressed in those weird outfits and yelling things like Trump being a Hitler, for all we know, she has.
I'm sure she has.
For all we know, she has. Yeah. How we got off on this early, I have no idea.
You brought it up, and then you kind of had to go there after you brought it up.
It's the ADD.
I'm still waiting to hear about this stuff across the pond. That story, too.
It's not nearly as interesting. It's not nearly as good as hers. Well, anyway, it turns out the story I found in this headline is pretty harsh. What this woman did at a baseball game has made her the most hated person in the country.
I think that's accurate.
Well, here's the thing. I will say this. Even though I was really mad at her and I thought she was wrong, I don't think we should crucify her for it. I think we could, let's state our comments and let's move on. Maybe she'll issue an apology. What I don't want to be is that we become like the liberals and that we try to cancel everybody. You know what I mean?
Cost them their jobs.
Yeah, I don't want to cost. Yeah. She's been embarrassed, and that's
enough.
She doesn't need just for us to keep piling on, but it was a heck of a scene there in Philadelphia.
It was.
And in fairness, to be a heck of a scene in Philadelphia, it has to be a heck of a scene. Because those sports fans are the worst sports fans in the whole United States. Now the hate mail comes from Philadelphia. But it's true.
They know
it's true. That whole city is just it's tough. It's tough. Speaking of tough, how much time do I have, by the way? You've
got at least 15 minutes.
About 15? So I spent like 15 minutes on that one story.
You did.
It's the first entertaining thing we've talked about in weeks.
That might be accurate.
So let's talk about the UK for a few minutes. The UK, and when I say UK, let's be fair about this, that does encompass Scotland, Northern Ireland, and England. But I really mean England.
Yeah.
And I know there are some elements of Northern Ireland that want to remain loyal to the crown. And there are even some Scots, too, because they've been brainwashed. A lot of Brits live there now. Mm-hmm. But we're talking about England here. And so it was fascinating to me that a country that's a part of Western civilization and you would think would have learned their lessons about trying to deprive people of their liberty, they arrest a man for speaking his mind. There's a comedian here, Graham Linham. Or is it Lineham? Lineham?
I think it's Linham, but I'm not 100% sure either.
Yeah, anyway. Irish comedian. He has a little show he does called Father Ted, co-creator. And what happened is he had said some things that were critical of the transgender movement. Mm-hmm. And no matter what you believe about that, whether you're pro-transgender or anti-transgender, that's not really the issue here. The issue is whether or not he can speak his mind without being arrested. And sure enough, he shows up back in the England, and I think he's met with 5 officers. And they take him down and book him, and he has to plead and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And his crime was, they're going to call it like fighting words or whatever the case may be, or inciting violence. Inciting violence. From across the pond, he incited violence. Speaking his mind about a sensitive political issue incites violence. If that's the case, there would be no political speech left. Mm-hmm. Because nowadays, every time I say something political on Facebook, it incites a nasty reaction from the left, which in turn would incite violence if they said it to my face. That doesn't mean it's against the rules. I'm a big boy. Mm-hmm. If they would have come to the Facebook page and say nasty things, as long as it's not slander or libel, right?
Yeah.
Just do it. You can use your opinion to call me a sorry person all day. It may hurt my feelings. Not really. It may hurt somebody's feelings. The point is that the price we pay to live in a free society is to sometimes be offended. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes people on the left and the right get this wrong sometimes.
100% agree.
The people on the right want to silence liberal speech. People on the left want to silence conservative speech. I want to hear everything.
Yeah.
I want to hear it all. What's wrong with that?
Let us decide which side is more ridiculous than the other. And that's the way it should be. There's nothing wrong with
Well, I'm going to tell you why it's important. Because our founders thought it was important. Mm-hmm. How do we know that? They actually inscribed the right in the very First Amendment. That's a big deal. What was the Second Amendment? Guns.
I hate that one too.
Look, let's talk about it. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression. It really is the guardian of all of the rights. You say, well, how could that be? It's just words. Because if you can't criticize your government, how can you defend your rights? If you can't speak about the importance of your rights, how can you defend your rights? It's the guardian of everything we have in this society. We had a judge years ago, a very famous justice named Cardozo. He talked about free speech a lot. And he said the matrix, the indispensable condition of nearly every other form of freedom, is speech. First of all, speech is the guardian of all rights. Second, it preserves self-government. The individual in this society is considered sovereign. You're sovereign. You may not think you are. You're supposed to be sovereign. If you're considered sovereign, how can they curtail what comes out of your mouth? How can they regulate that? It's quintessential, indispensable notion of sovereignty that you can say things that even may offend someone next to you. Number 3, and the best reason, I think, the truth is out there somewhere. Now, you say, what does that mean? In a court case, and I've tried cases all over the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
In front of that jury, the jury is hearing 2 different versions of truth. Because sometimes it's hard to know exactly what happened. But you build a case based on science and evidence. Science and evidence. The best example I can give you, if 3 people witness an event, you're going to probably get 3 different versions. The truth is there somewhere. And we're all imperfect people, so our system says, listen, here's how you find the truth. Each side advocates aggressively and persuasively. And we may not know the complete truth, but by the time everybody's had their say and all the evidence is in and all the expert testimony is in, the jury can then discern what they believed happened. Well, let me tell you why that works. It's the exchange of ideas through open debate that creates truth, or at least the closest part of truth we can find, being very imperfect people. John Milton talked about that. The only way to eliminate falsehood is to allow everybody to have a say. And he goes, at some point along that way, falsehood will be eliminated. Number 4, tyranny. You know, tyranny always begins with one quick thing, and that's suppression of speech. Always.
Mm-hmm.
It's always first. A king doesn't like what somebody's saying.
Yep.
And he tries to,
Yep.
Right? A government doesn't like it, so they imprison them. It's always the first actions of government to control speech because it insulates the leaders, those politicians, from being criticized. Can't do that, folks. One more thing. Speech. What if I told you that majorities rarely have to be concerned about their speech? Majorities. If 70% of the people believe something, that speech is going to be protected. You can bet that. It's the minority speech that needs the protection the most, though, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, because that's how changes occur. Jim Crow, slavery, abolition, women's suffrage. Minorities had to have the right to speak before those changes could be effectuated.
Yep.
And now you liberals, you don't seem to care about speech anymore.
Only their speech.
Right, when it doesn't suit you, you don't like speech. But it's the quintessential element of liberal democracies you claim to love so much. Until it offends you, then you want to ban it. I firmly believe that speech strengthens society as opposed to weakens society. Yeah. And I've always believed that. But England evidently does not. That's a real problem. Here's the thing. If England's behaving that way, I've talked to you about this before, you can sense this wave of liberalism almost always originating in those Western countries in Europe. Mm-hmm. How long is it before it crosses the pond and begins to influence our social debate? I think we're here. Universities, speech codes, right?
Yeah.
You've seen them.
I have.
Okay. And you're already starting to see how they were attacking conservatives on Facebook and Twitter for a time. Conservative thought was under attack in Facebook. I can tell you that right now. My page, dude, a couple of years ago.
I know.
Look. Let's say there was a couple of times I was getting 100 likes a minute. Mm-hmm. Not 10 likes a minute, not 3 likes a minute, 100 likes a minute. And then I just kept being conservative, and they said they took that little turn, that knob, and turned it down. Mm-hmm. And then, Lord forbid, you wrote the word COVID somewhere. If you just wrote the word COVID, you were ostracized.
Algorithm killed.
Right? And so get this. You spend all this time, effort, and some money building your Facebook because you realize it's a powerful messenger for debate.
Yeah.
And the liberals suppressed the debate. But that's what they do. And that's why they can never hold power again. They can never hold power again. So I hear all this stuff about Trump being a dictator and Trump wanting to take away rights. I've never felt my rights more oppressed than when a Democrat comes into office. Think about it. Speech, guns, you name it. They're after it.
Absolutely. And it's right because, again, we've seen it time and time again. They don't value the Constitution. Going back to your original point that we talked about, when you've got sitting senators that are saying that our rights don't come from our Creator, that our rights are not coming from God, that it comes from government, that's frightening because they honestly believe that. And if that's true and they begin to abuse our rights, take away our rights, because what government giveth, government can taketh away, and that's what they believe.
You said that so biblically. You said giveth and taketh.
Yep.
I like that. It's so accurate. It's so accurate. Something else before I move on to this next story, and it's just me pontificating. Nothing to see here. Why do we trust any government authority or power? It seems to me the safest place to be is always as a skeptic when it comes to government action.
Yeah.
I've never understood why anybody would just have a politician make a rule and then you say, okay, it sounds great to me. We ought to question that, shouldn't we? I mean,
we should.
Shouldn't there be some natural, healthy skepticism of government action?
Yes.
I think so, but what's happening? I mean, the liberals question nothing when they take action. And then poor Trump, which, again, I'm okay with questioning, but he gets zero benefit of it.
None.
Zero benefit of it.
And when he does something that ultimately gets proven right, he gets no credit then. They still try to attack the position that worked to our favor.
Here's the good news. There is good news on the horizon. Despite all the doom and gloom that we've talked about today, the conversation is changing. It's not changing among the far left. They're still as batty as they've always been. It's just here in the last few months, I've sensed nationally more of a normalization. And you say, what does that mean? Well, here's what it means. I remember just a couple of 3 years ago, I guess when the wokeness peaked. I don't remember when the apex of wokeness was, but I'm guessing 2020, 2021, right? And it peaked. And we were all scratching our heads thinking, really? There's 600 genders? Really? I had no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, that's when it peaked. We were like, what does this mean? And we didn't really, a lot of us, I mean, you and I were vocal, but I had friends that were just like, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, they were like, maybe there are 600 genders.
And they're the ones that now put their pronouns in their signatures like softies.
Well, let's keep going. That's right. So you have emails now. This is my preferred pronouns, or, I don't know, we, them. I don't know how it works.
If you're a single person, you can't be.
Well, here's the thing. Here's what I know, though. Here's what I know is that it got to the point where those things were being normalized.
Yeah.
Get this. More things. Martin Luther King talked about the quality and the content of character, right? And he looked forward to the day when whites and blacks were judged equally based on the content of character. Now, that's a normal statement from a normalized and over to window standpoint in this country. We all believe that. They took that even further. It wasn't just about equality now, being judged by the content of character. You had to be anti-racist, which means you had to literally discriminate to prove yourself to be anti-racist.
Yep.
You had to literally go out and hire someone simply because of the color of their skin, which violated everything the civil rights marches were all about. Is that LBJ calling there?
It might be. I think they're.
The thing is, it violated everything they believed in, and we sat there for a couple of years like, okay, this is weird, but it's becoming mainstream. And all of these ideas were just pounded on us, right?
Yep.
And it got strange. It got really weird. We pushed back. Now, granted, we lost some ground in that war, but when we talk about that window, the Overton window, where some ideas are seen as rational and mainstream, it seems like maybe we kind of pushed it back to the right just a bit. I mean, these folks were literally talking about defunding police departments.
They were.
And we sit there for 2 years thinking, they crazy. But they were serious about it. But now, you notice the liberals aren't talking about defunding anymore. They're talking about community police work now. They're saying it differently. They don't want to just fire all the police now. They just want to change the way monies are spent. So even they have changed their notions. And we talked about this story a few weeks ago, where there was a memo sent out by a leftist think tank, and they're literally saying, don't use the words birthing person. That's a mom. That's a woman, right? It's not a birthing person.
No.
And so, but still, those were terms that were becoming very, I think, mainstream for a while. And I think we've moved the window back here to normalcy. And maybe Trump has helped us do that to a certain extent. Maybe he's provided some degree of normalcy because he likes to fight back. Whatever the case may be, it's important that we reestablish control of the culture and the language. Not by force. Nobody's trying to pass laws to force things on people, but by common sense. Just, if you see something you think is crazy, it's probably crazy. And it's time we say so, just to make sure everything's balanced. How's that sound?
Sounds awesome. I mean, and that's what we would love to see happen. But is the American left ever going to allow that? Are they ever going to back down from worshiping at the altar of big government?
No, but here's the best thing about it. People are panicked right now in New York that this lunatic, Mandemi, might actually take leadership of New York City. And that would be a disaster.
Yeah.
But at least it's a disaster contained in New York City.
Yep.
If they're dumb enough to elect that lunatic, then they're dumb enough to have to live through 4 years of his governance. And if that's the case, the rest of us can watch this and we can learn some valuable lessons about how socialism doesn't and will never work in this society. It's interesting. We're trying to save New York from themselves right now. We're trying to get folks to drop out, trying to literally save New York from themselves. If they're dumb enough to vote for a socialist, let them live with the consequences.
They get what they deserve.
But I tell you this, don't come begging us for money.
Nope.
Don't come begging the feds for additional money when your city literally burns.
Sort of like California always begging for more money when they did this to themselves.
Well, not with Gavin Newsom. He's law and order now. You haven't heard
wonderful
that?
tweeter.
He's law and order. We talked about that last week.
I know.
He's not tweeting.
No.
The people out there say, oh, he's so clever. He's hired a couple of comedians to
yes,
tweet
he
for him.
has.
That's what this is all about.
There's nothing he's doing. We've seen him talk.
Listen. He's too busy with his skincare products to have time, and his hair to have time to tweet. You know this.
I do.
He's soft. He's got soft hands, Jack.
He does. We talked about that last week.
Anyway, if you wonder what we're doing, we're down to about a minute and a half, and this is just I'm trying to finish this show with some character and dignity.
we threw that out the window a while ago,
long time ago,
40 episodes ago.
20 years ago.
Fair.
20 years ago. Well, I will say this. How to wrap this up is really simple. And I hope if you're just now coming on board that you'll go back and watch this show earlier, because we were talking about the divide now between the parties being so significant that it may not be possible to reconcile. I don't want that to be the case. I hope it's never the case. But I know the elements of the radical left aren't just disagreeing with us anymore. They're trying to change the very fabric and foundations of our country. And that's the distinction. We're not debating anymore about small, minor things. We're debating about the survival of our Constitution and our republic. That's worth the debate. It's worth the fight. But there's no way we can let those guys win this. And there is no compromise at this stage for those people.
No,
There's not. We have to stand our ground. And thankfully, so far, Trump is doing the best he can. I wish Congress would do something besides hold hearings, but good luck with that.
Yeah.
By the way, did you see that lunacy with Kennedy the other day?
I did, and I was questioning, why are we having more Kennedy hearings?
I have never been more embarrassed of our government than watching a bunch of grown people yell at each other for no reason whatsoever. Well, there you have it. Jack, I'll tell you this. Whatever happens, we're going to be here to talk about it.
That's
we're
fair.
going to do our best to share our opinion, and hopefully somebody out there listens, and hopefully it invites criticism and discussion. We're not afraid of that.
No.
We're good with that. This is America, and we're okay with that. With that being said, I've had a good time. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Time to go watch football now.
Yep.
This has been Chris McDaniel's America here on the Midnight Ride Network, your home of the anti-establishment movement in this country. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next time.
Looks like you've been sleeping well,
Megan, he's back. The My Pillow guy.
and you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, My Pillow 2.0.
Wow, it's so soft and smooth.
It's cool to the touch. How did you do that?
Well, we took My Pillow's patented fill and combined it with this new technology that we didn't have back then when I invented My Pillow to bring you the best pillow in history, My Pillow 2.0. Just like all of you, I never imagined that My Pillow could get any better. That's why I haven't changed it in nearly 20 years. Then I heard about a revolutionary new technology, and I knew I had to bring it to you all. My Pillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of My Pillow.
The My Pillow 2.0 is cooler and softer than the last My Pillow. It is so comfortable to sleep on at night. I look forward to going to bed, and I wake up well rested in the morning.
Sleep is all about temperature and height. My Pillow 2.0's patented adjustable fill is going to give you the exact individual support you need from your head to your bed. And now here's where it gets even better. We've all experienced those temperature-related sleep interruptions where you get too hot, you toss and turn, you flip your pillow over to the cool side. Well, all that's gone with my brand new My Pillow 2.0 cooling fabric that's made with temperature-regulating thread.
The best sleep just got even better. Whether you have a MyPillow or not, you need to get the brand new MyPillow 2.0. Call or go to MyPillow.com now. Use your promo code, and for a limited time when you buy one, you'll get a second one absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
Visit mypillow.com.